Caleb Azalea, who, fortunately, was not insane, waltzed into the bookstore, draped in soft velvet reds, singing a queer song to himself about aliens. A monotone voice shushed him as he entered the depths of the building. People whispered in hushed voices, discussing trilogies and mysteries and wonders. The bookstore, to the people of Fort Crescent, was a pillar of the community, a sturdy rock among the chaos of the ocean. However, Fort Crescent wasn't near an ocean, but was built on a rock, a mountain. And today, the quiet mountain town had a visitor. Two, in fact. Azalea and Chambers, investigators working for an investigative institute, had arrived just that morning, and Azalea had already found his way to the bookstore to begin their investigations. "Ah, you must be Caleb Lyons," Azalea announced, alerting the man in the corner, who was reading a book. "That's me," he replied. "You must be one of the people working for the institute I contacted, here to investigate all the weird things that's been happening." "Indeed," Azalea confirmed. "The name's Caleb Azalea. Call me by my last name, or," he paused for dramatic effect, "the Great One." "Okay," the man responded, ignoring the bizarre being known as Caleb the Great One Azalea. "Let's head to the coffee place. It should be nearby." "Love coffee." Amidst the cold mountain air, the coffee place was quite a delight to its citizens, which prided itself on the nest-like and comfortable cafe, which now seated our two characters. "So," Azalea began, taking a seat, "before we begin, I'll have to take a few preliminary questions." "Sure," replied Lyons. "What do you need?" "Well, first and foremost, do you mind if I blow bubbles?" the investigator cheered. "Trust me, it's very calming." "What?" Azalea blew bubbles anyway. "Now, I am allowed to record this interview?" "You may," Lyons answered. "Anything I say can be used." "Wonderful!" Azalea pressed record on his tape recorder. "Now, shall we begin?" "My name is Caleb Lyons, and I was one of the 4 employees which discovered the children and the corpse." "Good, good. Now start from the beginning," Azalea instructed, finding a pencil and notebook as he did so. Unfortunately, Azalea did not use a notebook for taking notes, rather to doodle. "At the very, very beginning." "I work as a volunteer with Fort Crescent Search and Rescue, and I think our services were required a week ago, and just after that did the events begin," Caleb began. "Now, aside from the fact that only 4 of us were on station, as it was about 2 in the morning, this seemed like a normal search operation. We figured it was a tourist who got lost again, and set off to find them." "But it wasn't a tourist. It was a local," Azalea reminded. "There was a clear miscommunication. We didn't find out it was a local until halfway up the hiking trail." According to the context, Azalea paused, gathering his notes. "A week before the local, Zachary Montague, went missing, the victim received a mysterious tape, yes?" "So say the authorities," Caleb explained. "And this tape documented Zachary on a hike, then entering a rundown cabin, and that the cabin was bizarrely where the remains of Zachary Montague and 2 very alive children were found." "That is all true, yes. As I said, there was a miscommunication. Halfway up the trip did we realise it was Zach, and that's when one of the volunteers, an officer, told us about the tape. We figured it was worth a shot, and so we looked around, and soon enough, we'd found the cabin." "Absolutely wonderful!" Azalea cheered, clapping, much to the annoyance of several other people nearby. "Now, more." "Okay." Caleb wasn't sure what to think of Azalea, but he hoped Azalea's workplace, a famed investigative institute, would utilise the recording better than Azalea's current antics. "Well, after a bit of rooting around, we actually found this cave first." "A cave? Nobody mentioned a cave." "Well, we found one. It was somewhere between the cabin and the main road. I'm not exactly sure how to describe the cave, just that it was large. Sprawling, I guess. Inside the cave revealed itself to be a cave system, but we didn't have time to explore." "And what's so magnificent about a cave?" Azalea wondered. "Well, just that later. I checked if the cave was marked on maps, but, well, it wasn't. There's no cave systems here on Creasing Mountain, Caelan revealed. Maybe a storm uncovered it, I don't know. But I do know that I haven't been able to find it since. And that cave, we went in for what felt like a minute, and we were out half an hour later. Fascinating. Anyway, do continue, Azalea remarked, blowing even larger bubbles. Right, anyway, after that, we headed up the mountain and soon enough, we found the cabin. It was the oddest thing. It was made with this black wood that I swear can't exist in nature. This wood was soft, like flesh, and while most of the windows were all shattered, the windows that hadn't made no sense. It reflected us back, but, well, differently. Our reflections always seemed to move just before we did, and the coloration would always be a shade too light. It honestly looked like that old cartoon. Fun science now. How did you? I'm psychic, Azalea lied. But continue. Well, then we decided to go inside, but the doors were locked. The officer with us tried to kick the door down, but it simply wouldn't budge. It was like something inside was pushing against it, keeping us out. Caelan paused to recollect his thoughts. Next, we just decided to go through one of the broken windows. We were careful, but I still ended up with a small cut. Anyway, once inside, we tried to find out if anyone was inside, but then we realised the strangest thing. Which was, Azalea questioned. Well, we were in a room, but there was no way out of the room besides the windows. It didn't connect to whatever room had the main door. I don't know who would create such a cabin, but the next thing we knew, we heard the front door open, and we immediately rushed outside. Interesting. Azalea looked around his notebook, searching through the doodles to finally find a scrap of paper. In your private report, you stated that you saw a dog. Yes, Caelan confirmed. I was the first outside, and I saw this dog run out of the cabin. Except it didn't seem like a dog. It seemed like one of those cartoon animals, big eyes, floppy ears, a tongue sticking out, and I swear it was running on 2 legs. Noted. I told the others, but they didn't see it, and they didn't believe me. But anyway, we entered the cabin, and there he was. The remains? Yes. We were immediately blasted by heat as soon as we entered. A fireplace was lit. But then we saw him. The corpse was on a sofa, laying down, almost as if he was relaxing. He was mostly bones by then, with only a few bits and pieces of him remaining. I swear, it was like an animal mauled him. The dog? Azalea asked. If it was a dog. What do you mean? It'll make more sense as I explain. He paused, then added, Not really. Then let us continue, Azalea decided, opening a can of cereal as he did so. Next? Well, that's when we heard the footsteps, Caelan explained. They were coming from further in the cabin, and soon enough, we found 2 children. They both had this icy blonde hair, and their skin was as white and pearly as porcelain. Interesting. We asked them if they lived there. They didn't answer. In fact, the 2 of them, a boy and a girl, didn't seem to say anything. They just pointed at things. But the strangest thing was that I asked one of them if they knew what happened to Zachary, after obscuring the body, of course, and the girl pointed outside. I looked outside, and I swear, there was this... What? Azalea declared. Do tell. You may not believe me, but I swear I saw this cartoon dog outside. It was just like the thing that had run out, except it was now standing on 2 legs, like a guy in a cheap dog costume. I wasn't sure if it was real, but I blinked, and there it was, waving to me. Did you tell anyone? I told the others, but as soon as I did, the thing just smiled. Its fake mouth curved upwards, and then it walked into the woods. By the time the other 3 arrived, it was gone. I told them I thought I'd seen something and dismissed it. I closed the door, but I swear, minutes later I heard this scratching, like something was trying to get in. Interesting. What then? The scratching stopped, just as the officer entered the room. We decided to call in the authorities, Caleb informed. But for some reason, our devices didn't work, though they usually did, and me and one other guy stayed behind to guard the children. And the body. A logical idea. Anyway, it soon began to grow light, and everything seemed safer. I hadn't seen any weird things, and just as the first rays of light breached the horizon, the other volunteer decided to take a nap. I was left alone, and that's when I saw it. The dog. Caleb nodded. I saw this shadow appear, covering one of the many holes in the door. Holes that I'm sure weren't there before. I stepped outside to take a look, and there were these scratches all over the door. Creepy. I sat down, found a book, and then began to read it. Then, just mere moments after that, I heard this noise outside. It was like this laugh, but it was distorted and seemed to be something out of a kid's show. And then, well, the scratching started again. So what did you do? Azalea questioned. I don't know. The noise, that horrid laughter, just kept getting louder and louder, and I swear it was laughing in joy. But then, before I knew it, the others were back, and with them arrived a squad of officers. And you're sure this wasn't your imagination? According to the evidence photographs, I didn't see any scratch marks on the door. No, I'm sure it was real. No way it could be my imagination. I'm simply not that creative, nor am I on drugs. Right, continue. The next thing I knew, I was at the police station, being questioned. I explained to them that the four of us had discovered the body through the search and rescue organisation, and they let me go soon after, Caleb explained. That's when the weird stuff really began. Very not boring, Azalea complimented, tossing away his bubble juice onto the floor, much to the confusion of the manager, who stared at him with deep suspicion. The first time it happened, I was in a home improvement store when I saw it. I was passing the mirrors when I caught a strange reflection out of the corner of my eye. I swear, it looked just like me, except it just wasn't. Then the strangest thing happened, Caleb murmured. I saw this movement, like a man trying to run on all fours, except not really. What did you see? I'm not sure, but later that day, I was sleeping and around 2 my phone buzzed, waking me up. Caleb continued. My security camera app alerted me to a strange intruder outside. I checked the app, opening the camera, but there wasn't anything out there. I was about to dismiss it as the wind when I saw this, well, wobbling on one of the screens, like something was shaking it. Then, Azalea questioned, tossing seemingly random items from his bag as he did, searching for something. At last, he found it, a strange lighter, which he casually flicked on and off. Caleb attempted to ignore it. There's this tree in front of the camera, but it's a really thin one, and suddenly, from behind this tree emerged this costume. It was that dog costume again, the same one I'd seen in the woods. It just stepped out from behind the tree, stared at the camera, and waved. And so you called the authorities? I did, but they took far too long to arrive, and it felt like hours. I checked the app again after calling them, and it was gone. I thought I was safe, but then, just a moment later, this horrid noise started on my doorstep. It was as if something was trying to get in, pawing and scratching, and there was this distorted panting too. And again, the noise vanished when the police arrived. That's true, Caleb confirmed. There was not a mark on my door, and when I tried booting up the camera footage to show them, my phone simply refused to open the app. Creepy, Azalea murmured. Then the next time I encountered it was on the bus, Caleb told. I was going to work. It was my daily commute when the bus unexpectedly stopped and this thing, the man in the dog costume, got on and sat right behind me. A man? What makes you say that? Because, just as the bus drove again and neared my stop, I heard its voice behind me, asking if I wanted to play. I see. I got off of that bus as soon as I could, but I looked back as I got off, and that man was no longer there. It was some old woman in the seat instead. I'm not sure what the hell that thing is, but I want it out of my life. Azalea briefly noted the manager pointing at some security guards at him before continuing the interview. After that, I saw it on TV. It was one of those new melodrama shows. I was watching it with some of my friends. Well, until the screen just sort of faded a moment, and the next thing I knew, that dog was on the screen again. And suddenly, I felt my friends' hands all over me, and then they all turned to me and asked me to play with them in this deep, awful voice, just like the voice on my boss. But then, before I could process what was going on, the lights flickered, and everything was back to normal. Is that it? No, the next time it happened actually happened today on the bus, Caleb explained. I was looking out of the window when I saw it. It was always there, just silently waving at me. When the bus passed it, it would always appear a few minutes later, but every time it would get closer to the bus. First it was on the streets, and then on the crosswalk, and then on the actual street itself. Somehow, all the cars just kind of bent over it, like it was refracting off a mirror. And that's it? Azalea inquired. Yeah, that's all, Caleb concluded. We'll be looking into this matter, Azalea promised, handing Caleb 2 cards. Me or my partner, Paris Chambers, may contact you as more details arise. In the meantime, stay safe, and if anything happens, call us. With that, they parted ways. Caleb exited the building while Azalea noted some more details. But as Caleb left the building, Azalea swore he saw something in the cafe stand up and follow Caleb outside. Azalea wasn't sure, but he thought it was a man in a dog costume.